Yeah, so I'll give you more of an overview of temperate Australian fishes and, like my colleagues, a little bit about why museums are important and what we do is important. I'm here with 4 of my colleagues from the fish team. We have 4 of us who work at the museum, and we have many other people associated with us, like Chris, my colleague, who will talk after myself. And the thing is that I think what many of us don't realise is that we have these huge collections, and these collections aren't just things on shelves. They are used and they're valued. So, for example, this is a little bit of what we do, just as an introduction. We have things in jars, tanks, drums, vials. We have larvae, we have huge sharks, we have otoliths, we have all sorts of ranges of things. 7 different storage areas just for fishes. And one of the things that we are, while a museum, we're a library. Instead of books, we're animals. It's really active and very much used from scientists within Australia and around the globe. So for the fish department, we on average do about 100 loans. So we pack our preserved fishes up and send them overseas for research. And also the other way, we have a lot of fishes sent to our research scientists to do research on. And most of what we do is about describing new species of fishes and cataloguing our biodiversity. Okay, so an overview of Australian fishes. So 75% of Australia's vertebrate fauna are fishes. We have more than 5,180 species of fishes known from Australian waters. So that's tropical through to temperate. So for the temperate region of Australia, which is, I'll talk a little bit more about in the next slide, 25% of the fish fauna, marine fish fauna, is endemic. This constitutes a biodiversity hotspot, which most people don't think a lot about. So what that means is that while you have many species found in tropical reefs, they are found throughout the whole Indo-Pacific, so in other countries, Indonesia through to Japan. But what's so special about temperate Australia is that because we have so many fishes that are only found in this part of the world, more than anywhere on the planet. So for marine fauna, temperate Australia is a biodiversity hotspot. So that's not often communicated very well through the media and science, I think. So what constitutes temperate Australia? It is basically from the Queensland, New South Wales border through the south and up through just north of Perth. So that's roughly 8,000 kilometres of coastline. And the thing that I've liked recently is some researchers have coined temperate Australia the Great Southern Reef, which I think is a really nice term. And that's mostly defined by kelp. So anything north of temperate, you generally won't find kelp associated with. So for temperate Australia, Eclonia and your bull kelps, which I think start around about here, is that correct? From my colleagues at Fisheries tell me. So while many of the families of fishes that are really common around the world, some of them have a lot of endemism in Australia. So for example, seahorses, pipefishes and their relatives, which is this group here, has a really high endemism in Australia. So this is a red wide-bodied pipefish, really narrow range endemic, found, only described last year as new to science, found in Botany Bay through to Jervis Bay. The same with this guy, the red-fingered anglerfish, also only found from Sydney through to Jervis Bay. Some of these families along the bottom you'd all be familiar with. Many of you would have a much better idea of the fauna of Tathra Wharf than I do, but these the weedfish, the stingarees and the clingfish, there's a huge amount of endemism in Australia, and there's still a lot of undescribed fauna as well that we're working on. The Kapala, sorry, just going to say the Kapala stingery is quite a neat ray as well. It was only described in 2009 and it was named after New South Wales Fisheries had a research vessel called the Kapala. And while it did a lot of exploration in terms of fishing grounds for New South Wales from the 80s and 90s, it has been an absolute gold mine of understanding of our fish fauna for the New South Wales coast. And it still also gives us new species to this day. This is one of my favourite families of fishes, the weed fish, really cryptic, still undescribed species in New South Wales as well. Some of the ones that you also know about. So not only is the endemism within families, but we also have a lot of families of fishes that are only found in temperate Australia, which is the other thing that constitutes our biodiversity hotspot. This fabulous fish here, the red velvet fish, it's found a bit further south, from Victoria through to Western Australia. Really rare, but yeah, very uncommon to see that underwater. And the gorgeous Anaplosis, the old wives, common under the Wharf, and the red Indian fish, also another family. And the handfish, you may all know the handfish from Tasmania. There's a recently extinct species and also many threatened species of handfishes. One of the things about what we do is that while for fishes, you can photograph them and see them, there are many species that have only been known from museum collections and have only been collected via trawls or fishing methods. So the handfish is one of them. The Australian spotted handfish is found only along the New South Wales coast at depths from about 70 to 200 metres in really soft bottom. So we only know that from fishing records and our collections. Okay, so what we do, so as my colleagues have mentioned, we catalogue biodiversity. So we kind of say that we're the building blocks for knowing what biodiversity we have. So in museum collections, we have a reference. So it's easy to take a photograph of a fish, but we don't always know what species it is without looking at it under the microscope. The same with our invertebrate colleagues. It's often, you'll say, yeah, that could be the same thing, but you look closer under the microscope and they're different species. So these two you'd find locally in the Tathra region. Ogilvy's weedfish and the undescribed species, which is still being written up to this day. Another one of the species which has only been known from collections, museum collections, which is the Kapala Fisheries research vessel. The Ichthyology, it's the anglerfishes. We know that from shallow water they're also found quite deep, also like the handfish, like soft bottoms, collected quite deep, 50 to 200 metres. Oh, sorry, just go back, I missed one bit. And the thing that is still really exciting is there is one new species described as new to Australia every week for fishes. So we know that there's lots of invertebrates to do, but there's still a lot of fishes to do too, and that is new species and also newly recorded for Australia. So things that are turning up that have been known throughout the wider Indo-Pacific, but we're now finding them in Australia as well. The strengths of collections is that, yes, we still have a lot to learn. We're still sending a lot of our specimens overseas. A lot of the newly described species of fishes aren't from people going out like us collecting. They already exist within our collections. So it's visitors from overseas, specialists in different groups coming and visiting us, looking through the collections and saying, this is actually different. You've got two here where we thought you had one. It's a reference data for our described biodiversity, so it's quite foundational. So as also Mandy pointed out, the Atlas of Living Australia, our data is, in a 3-month period, on average has about 100,000 downloads. So this is being used for environmental impact assessments, it's been used for education, it's been used for taxonomic research, a huge range of uses. Here's another one of the really interesting fishes that are found only in temperate and from southern New South Wales is the green rat clingfish. It was only described last year as a new species by our colleagues in Western Australia and in Texas. The other thing, as Mandy also mentioned, is that the genetics is really important for all of our knowledge of fishes now. So whenever we collect, which is what we've been doing while we've been here, is we photograph, we preserve in formalin or ethanol, and we take a muscle tissue. And so all of those different things can be used by researchers around the globe. So our data and our specimens are available to everybody worldwide for research. So many of the specialists for fish groups aren't found in Australia. So if we need to know about flatheads, they go to Japan. So because we don't have a flathead expert in Australia. And yes, so we're building, while we have a lot of specimens, the museum's about 197 years old, a lot of those early things are formalin fixed, so we can't do genetics on those. So now we make it an effort to look for gaps in the collection or gaps in the geography and collect to take tissue from. One other thing that we do, and Libby, it's great to see that everybody else is quite keen on iNaturalist too, Atlas of Life. The great thing about iNaturalist is that we run a citizen science project as well, which can feed into so many other citizen science projects. So we run one called Australian Fishes. It's been running for a bit over 3 years, and we have, this was just taken last week, 161,600 observations. There's nearly 5,000 community members, and we've got 3,207 species listed, which is pretty amazing considering that many things have never actually had described species, still don't have a real life photo in situ. So often it's just a museum photo or it's been described in a research paper. This was a really interesting find. Your local fisheries guys down here are absolutely superstars with letting us know when something really interesting or unusual turns up. So they notified us that there's a whale shark washed up at Eden. It's the official southerly record of a whale shark, and so fisheries were able to go and get tissue from that specimen. It's now lodged in the collection, and we're hoping that that can be used by greater whales shark research around Australia. And yeah, so the same thing for this data will go to Atlas of Living Australia. So if you want to know what's in your area, whether it be on land or sea, you can do a bounding box search, and you can just search if you just wanted to search Turra Beach, you could get all the records of everything that was found in Turra Beach. And so here's just some of your local species, and hopefully maybe somebody here who's been taking some photos underneath Tathra Wharf. The other thing I did forget to mention, one of the things that makes the biodiversity of temperate Australia so interesting is that we have been separated geologically for such a long period of time, which is why we have so much endemism. I've left some Australian Fishes cards out there too if anybody's interested at the end. And just to finish off, I thought I'd show you some of our famous faces. The fish that broke the internet was taken, this image was taken on a research cruise that the Australian Museum was on by Karen, who's with us tonight. So Mr. Blobby is in fact in our collection back in Sydney. The other famous face is a goblin shark. That was collected by commercial fishers off Eden, and that juvenile is also in our collection.
I delivered it to the Australian Museum.
Oh, thank you, Libby. Yeah. And this famous face is actually going to be in a sharks exhibition soon too. So the fish is really well preserved, and hopefully we can put it on display where a lot more people will appreciate it. One other really great thing about New South Wales and where we are is that the continental shelf drops off really close to the coast. So all these fabulous deep sea faces are actually found really close and really accessible for us. So yeah, the museum has a fabulous range of deep sea relatives. So